Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Command Post Cohort. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than what you normally hear from us. Last week, Andrew was out in Texas and did a live recording, and that's what you're going to hear today. So I'll let Andrew tell you a little bit about what all went down out in Texas.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Hey, everybody. So this is going to be fun, I think. So this was a part of the Military Connected Monthly Mentorship Meetup here at the Capitol Factory in Austin, Texas. It was a great event. It was a co-interview with my buddy Jeremy Willis of Startup Anthology. You should go check out his podcast. And we interviewed Jim Orbock, who's kind of a fixture down here, and kind of about his time in the Army and his entrepreneurial journey. So I hope you like it. I think you'll learn some things. Let us know.
Y'all enjoy.
My goal is to deliver leadership lessons to help talk about that aspect of startup culture. So I'm excited to be here. I do want to give a special thanks to our sponsors today, JP Morgan Chase, IVMF through Syracuse, and Texas Veterans Commission.
Capitol Factory.
Combined,
I'm sorry. And then Texas Veterans Coalition, which.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy, you want to kick us off here?
Sure. So I want to introduce Jim Orbock. He is a friend of mine. What?
You actually admit it.
Yeah. I do.
Wow.
We met. Our sons went to the same school. Our kids went to the same school.
Yep. Egyptian Day.
Yeah, and we were the only ones that weren't really working that hard that day, and so we met up at the school event, and it was Egyptian Day. So we're the only two dads in there. So we kind of met each other, and
I think it was out of desperation.
yeah, well, that or talking to third graders all day. So
Desperation.
cool.
Not talking to third graders all day.
Well, Jim is my friend. He's a veteran. He's he retired again.
Second time,
Yeah.
just about a month ago.
So he's a retired colonel in the Army. Went to West Point, working at Spartan Financial.
Yep. Startup
Here, and then actually is on my board of advisors for Startup Anthology. Helped me figure out what I'm doing and how we're going to do it, whatever that is. So, Jim.
My first client.
Yeah, well, that too, yeah. Yeah. So Jim, what kind of motivated you to get into, well, first of all, go to West Point?
I had no motivation to go to West Point. And so if you go back, so went in 84, so I'm actually an 88 grad out of West Point. So Randy George, Chief of Staff of the Army, is my classmate, did much better than I did through the career. And so most of my classmates actually did well. I was probably the bottom third of the class, so I wasn't the GOAT, which is the lowest ranking, but I think we were in the same club together or something, so. But I had no desire to go there. What it was is a guidance counselor in high school. She said you should apply to all the military academies, and she kept hounding me, and just to get her off my back, I actually applied and thought I was done. And then I decided to go for a competition. I was in Albuquerque. Dad was a military career, and so career military, Air Force. But I applied to all the academies, and lo and behold, West Point came out real early and said, you can join us. And Air Force Academy was dorking around, and the Naval Academy said your GPA wasn't good enough. I was carrying a 4.2 at the time. So then I put in for this competition, won the leadership award for New Mexico. Next week, Naval Academy called me again and said, hey, could you reapply? I said, no way.
You lost it.
You lost it. But I was the youngest of 6, and reality kicked in, and Ronald Reagan actually gave me the appointment to the academy, and I couldn't compete. I wanted to go to Stanford, but $80,000 a year versus free. Or actually they paid me, was a pretty good incentive to go.
So after your career in the Army,
yep,
and you got out, what's been your motivation to actually become an entrepreneur and start your own business?
So first time out, I just dorked around. So that's 18. I retired as a colonel, and then my wife looked at me and said, "You really need to get a job." And so the Army
Yeah.
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 Yeah, she said, thanks very much for playing for 8 months and growing the garden, but you need to go find a job. So Army Futures Command kicked in, and so I went and got my second career with them. So I was employee number 2, hire for the Army Futures Command coming to Austin off the street.
Okay.
So just left there. I mean, the president gave us a unique opportunity to walk out the door and start start a company while still getting paid.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I'm getting paid through December.
Okay. That's awesome.
So what better way to transition into a job than to have 8 months of
A paycheck.
a paycheck? Yeah. And so wife actually, during this time, the wife actually started her own job. So she's always wanted to be an interior designer. But 30 years of following me around the world really doesn't lean itself towards that. So she started, as soon as I started at the Army Futures Command, she started working. And so since then, she's in her 4th, 5th year now, has won not only regional awards, but our state awards. So she's won 2 state awards for her designs. She's actually won all of Southeast United States for one of her designs. So she's doing really well. Her business was set and still going well. And so when I got this opportunity, and really what it became about to is the chief operations officer, the G357, about 3 months ago said, I can't understand why you guys are working for AFC. You guys are really talented. You can do this stuff. And it just started me thinking, going, why am I working at Army Futures Command?
Right.
The president announced this exit strategy.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
And so I said,
Gotcha.
and it just made sense that this is a time to transition, minimal risk. And I've run businesses before, so this hasn't been a new startup for me. I've actually had 3 other businesses, LLCs, throughout my 30-year military career. And so this is number 4 starting.
Okay.
It's just a new field that I'm taking off in. And so I feel a little more confident because my military career has prepared me for what I want to do now.
Right. What? So, through your military career, your 3 other businesses, what are the top 3 lessons learned that you're bringing into this new venture that you're working on with Spark?
Top 3 lessons. First one is get a good lawyer. Second one is
Good thing it's being recorded.
yeah. Second one is that it's not a solo effort; it's a team effort. And the third one is spend as much time as you can narrowing your vision of what you want to do.
Okay.
Because there'll be so many distractors, so many things that will want to pull you off target. We used to say in the Army, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
Yeah. You said that in the Navy too, so.
Well, you guys usually do that.
Yeah. Well, ballistic missiles, you can aim at nothing and still.
Well,
hit
you know,
everything.
yeah. You just got to get approximates good
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. It's like horseshoes, hand
Hand
grenades,
grenades and
nuclear
nuclear warfare.
weapons.
Yeah, right.
So, out of those 3 lessons learned and like the lessons learned that's going forward, what advice would you give to your younger self? And honestly, would you have listened to it whenever you told it?
I probably wouldn't have listened to the lawyer part.
Okay.
I mean, who wants lawyers hanging around? So,
They're expensive.
no, lawyers are great guys. I have very good friends that are lawyers, and they keep me out of trouble. Probably the other one, the experience was about narrowing down the focus. I think all 3 is what I would tell myself, and I really, I don't know if I adhered to that very well. Early on as a lieutenant, everyone's told, listen to your non-commissioned officer because they'll keep you out of trouble. And my wife will tell you probably for the first 5 years of our marriage, I didn't listen very well. She'd be talking and, it'd be sort of like that Charlie Brown wah, 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 wah going on. And so I think I've come to appreciate different perspectives and different personalities in a way that I value their input much more. I may not agree to it, but the different perspective gives me, and that's probably the biggest thing, especially looking back down, is the ability to have perspective, the larger view, in order to narrow down where do I fit into this ecosystem and how can I contribute value into that ecosystem.
Gotcha.
And so right now, looking back at myself, I don't know if I really valued perspective.
Okay. Well, you ready to bring your half of this on? I'll give you the mic and then.
Thanks.
Yeah.
This is a tag team. I feel like I'm wrestling.
I told you
WWF.
It's the position of honor here. You're in the position of honor. So I want to unpack what you said a little bit about narrowing your vision, because I feel like you're right. As a single person business, right, especially at startup, right, you are doing everything.
Yep.
Right. You have to be the marketeer. You have to be the financier. You have to be HR until you know as you add more people. So how do you begin to narrow those things down, and really how do you key in on and make sure you stay keyed in on what you want to achieve as a business?
Yeah, I think I'd throw in probably 3 or 4 things, bits of advice. There's an old adage that if you want to learn something new, read an old book. And if you want to learn something old, read a new book.
I feel like that's accurate.
Yeah, and so there's this old book called The On Purpose Business, which really helped me, and it's the second part of a book called The On Purpose Person. And so it was really kind of an interesting book in the fact the guy took all these things that were out there in front of him and kind of played this imaginary tennis match and said, of these two, it was kind of like the Final Four, Final 16 in basketball, and he narrowed down which was more important. It was a matter of priority to get to what was the most important thing. And really what I liked about that was it was one lens, one way to approach what was going on. And there's numerous ways that you can do that. There's, the Myers-Briggs, there's Team Myers-Briggs, and there's a lot of argument either way on whether that's good or not. There's other team building.
I feel about that.
Yeah, you agree with that? There's other team building things out there. There's other ways to narrow down. But I think if you could start reading books, I'm reading this one called Venture Deals right now. And it's just really illuminating because it's coming in not only from the VC side, but also from the entrepreneur side of what's important. What sort of thing. So I think reading's one. Second one is having an advisor or mentor. Because they've gone down the road once or twice, maybe not the same thing, but they've been in similar circumstances of which to do that. Third one is having that team around you and sharing the vision of what you think, and my kids are in Scouts and they have this thing, what is vision? Well, it's what future success looks like. And so having an idea of what that future success looks like, President Kennedy saying we are going to go to the moon. Well, he didn't know how to the technology didn't even exist at that time, but he created a vision of what success looked like, was putting man boots on the ground on the moon, and we figured out how to get from here to there. The goal was set out, and I think part of that goal setting is what you as an entrepreneur really need to do is, hey, I want to be 10 people strong. I want to be doing $1 billion worth of asset management. I want to be doing X, Y, Z. What do my peers in this industry look like? And it may be an industry that no one's doing anything like that, but you have a goal of where you want to be, and most likely you may never reach it, but at least you're heading in the right direction. We used to talk about that. Soldiers, it's not a matter of when they're going to get there on the land nav, if they're going the right direction, or if they'll get there. It's a matter of when they'll get there, if they're headed the right direction. If they're headed 180s out, you can't help them.
Well, so it sounds like you're sticking to the purpose, right? And
Yeah.
we have in the Army the 5-paragraph op order, right? And paragraph 2 and paragraph 3, paragraph 3 contains the commander's intent, right? Purpose, key task, and end state.
Right.
Right. So that drives, forgetting all else.
You got the intent.
You got the intent.
Yeah.
And you can carry out with that.
Right.
So as you start to hire on people and start to build out a business, it's important to keep people focused on that intent, right?
Yep. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the investment into your people.
Yes.
That makes that difference. Whether it's the initial onboarding, the challenge you have is that how I will treat a new employee is going to be completely different from the 10-year-old or 10-year, 15-year employee that's in my organization. And so I want to incentivize them staying because I've invested so much to them. And how do I do that? The conferences, investing in their career, investing in their personal goals. And it takes time then, when you talk about expanding out, to figure out, does what I want to accomplish or the goals for the organization, how does that align to the personal goals of the individual? And can we have it to be such a way that it's a win-win situation, really a win-win-win situation,
right,
for the company, for the investors, for the individual. And you end up with loyalty out of and truly the hard part of any wading through all these different variables is that ability to build trust and maintain trust.
Like that.
And so, do you have my back? Do I have your back? Can I stay with you long term? And it's counterculture to much of what industry is talking about now is, you're here just to perform for the little bit 2 or 3 years that you're here, and I just want you to perform. I have no loyalty to you staying with me long term.
Mm-hmm. So to me, it sounds very similar to what Simon Sinek would say, right? You start with why.
Yeah.
So you explain your purpose, and that. Let me say this back to you, make sure I got it right. What you're saying, like that will help bring along, build trust, build loyalty with future employees from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 100. Which brings me to another question. So in the Army, in the services, right, we are part of a large organization. We do not have an empty calendar. We have a very full calendar.
Yep.
Wherever we go. And we are all very aware that we are small cogs in a big calculator, big machine, right? So that is a very different type of requirement, very different type of leadership than being a startup or small business owner. So can you talk to me through kind of some of the challenges there with being, in a big, larger machine and then being your own machine?
Actually, I think one of the nice things is you probably have more freedom in your startup or small business. Of course, there's more responsibility. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done. Yep. Most of the time. So you especially if you're a one-person startup, it all falls back to one person. But there's a lot more intimacy, and I think the challenge for a lot of startups as they grow bigger into the culture changes, and so how do you maintain that intimate culture as you get larger? And so, and I'm not sure I have a good answer on that. Probably the one that I would reflect on, it was really kind of, I was just reading it today. There was Napoleon this was after the Battle of Waterloo. He is on St. Helena reflecting on Jesus Christ. And he said, here I am one of the emperors of Alexander the Great, Caesar, Napoleon. I mean, he lists off all these other great emperors. And he says, yet alone Jesus was completely different. And he said, we ruled, men died for us because of force. And it was only because of love that these people are willing to die, millions of people. And he said, even across time, I failed the Battle of Waterloo, and all my key people have abandoned me. And he says, here's Jesus, he died, and people are still willing to die for him 1,800 years later.
So that concept of servant leadership.
Servant leadership, the willing to die for someone else. I mean, he took 12 guys that were nothing, and they went everywhere. And so what can I do? How can I reflect that servant leadership attitude towards those that work for me? And how can I manifest that into the key leaders that I have, that they in turn will want to serve the people? And that's really kind of the organizational spirit. I've been part of companies that have that ethos in them of wanting to help others to succeed in their goals, personal goals. So people first, mission always. We always say that in the Army.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And yet sometimes I don't think we ever really live it. So how can you really make that happen? So that's kind of my thought. And that really helps to keep that ethos running through small businesses.
Okay, so then how does one balance that idea of servant leadership, that idea that, you know, your job is to remove the obstacles of your employees to facilitate their success, so that facilitates the success of the business, while at the same time providing them purpose, direction, motivation?
So I think a lot of challenges leaders have is they want to do the job.
Right.
As opposed to let the person assigned to do that role and responsibility do the job. And so I think really helping to define roles, responsibilities, and outputs for each of the people helps pull back in what's their bucket. And I don't want to do with that. I don't have enough time. I barely have enough time as it is to do what I need to do, let alone do that job. And so one of the challenges we had, the battalion I took to Afghanistan the second time, so we were the senior civil affairs battalion in all of Afghanistan in 2012. And I ended up, we were dispersed all across the country. But during our train up, I allowed we did more in our training than what was required for us to get out of the site, out of the deployment site. And I challenged each of my commanders. I called them stallions. They would fight against each other all the time. But they were just, I mean, I just came back from Montana. Last Friday we were branding up there, and we had probably 50 horses. And it was fun to watch the horses interact with each other. And that's what these guys were. I mean,
I'm curious where you're going with this.
What I did was I gave them freedom to execute within their sphere.
Wait, the horses or your commanders?
Both.
Okay, right. Sorry.
No, the commanders gave them guidance, direction, and they operated within their own sphere. But you also want to throw in challenging to them too, because they'll get the stallions, just like the stallions up in Montana. When they're bored, they'll start fighting with each other.
It sounds like my kids.
It's probably pretty close. big kids. But giving them purpose, meaning, direction, challenge, while looking for their best interest, and knowing that they are in a safe environment that they can be trusted.
All right. You want to finish up here, Jeremy? You got any questions before we turn it over to the audience?
No. I just want to reiterate on the two things. When you're starting a business and you start by yourself, you are in charge of doing everything, right? And as you bring on more people, you have to develop that trust to help them take it on. But it's really hard for you to give up ownership of something because you've done it a certain way all this time to get it out from 0 to 1, and now you're going to 2, and that's a big change, or to 10. So it's like relinquishing control of your baby to someone else to help you do it.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right that a good leader will let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And
Definitely.
as much as they have to trust you, you have to trust them.
Right.
So the trust is a two-way street.
Yeah.
And so can you, and part of that is, and that's why I go back to a good mentor. That's why I go back to reading stories, reading an old book. You'll find that these are sources by which you can build your own self-confidence. And so a good leader is confident in themselves and is willing to trust. Mm-hmm. Now, the flip side of that is, I usually I call them data points. When people started creating a pattern of behavior, pattern of performance that did not align to being successful.
Right. That's huge. You got to
then you address it. Yep.
Got to remove that.
Yeah.
If possible. And then the one last thing you mentioned, like as startups and small companies, there is a sense of psychological trust as well of within that team, where you can be and say and almost do almost anything, whether it's stupid or great, and feel comfortable in that group to fail. And that, I think that is, as startups and companies grow, they have to maintain that intentionality of that psychological safety that's within that small cohort, and then intentionally tell the story of what that's like to carry it on to the next cohort of employees.
So I'll throw a couple things on just kind of throwing that. My first company commander, Tony Ranieri, phenomenal leader. When he left company command, we gave him a plaque that said, "Thank you for giving us the freedom to fail."
It's huge.
And so second lieutenants, I fully expect that they're going to fail. Mm-hmm. If that was, which they, yeah, right. But if it was a colonel in combat, I do not want him failing. And so there's a level of experience that says, I expected you to perform at X, Y, and Z. So a new employee, I fully expect him to fail. But I'm not going to give him the task of, what was Eisenhower given? Take Europe.
Yeah. Easy.
So I fully expect that a younger employee is not going to get the same level of responsibility, nor do I expect, my grace period is much larger for failure to help mentor and guide and to develop. 5 years from then, I'm okay with a mistake as long as it doesn't kill the company.
Right. If they're making the same mistake 5 years from now,
yeah.
You've waited too long.
Right.
But just saying.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on and being our guinea pig guest host for this fireside chat. We just want to open it up for everybody. If anyone else has any questions, feel free.
As always, take these lessons, use them, and spread them. Everyone is welcome in the cohort.
Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more, and drop us a line at commandpostcohort.com to request a specific topic.
We'll see you next time on the cohort.